Welcome, everyone. We're trying something new. I'm the first time I've ever been the service leader, so it's my first time. Our mission: for every person searching for spirituality, Berean Unitarian Universalist Fellowship provides a welcoming and caring religious community dedicated to diversity of thought, social and environmental justice, and peace for all. You are welcome here. Here, we strive to build a world where all people have freedom of choice and the right of conscience, where everyone is welcome and cared for. We strive to build a world where differences are honored, where all people are equal and have equal access to service and equal say in the matters that affect them. We strive to build a world where all beings are honored for their inherent worth and dignity, and everyone understands that we are part of nature. We strive to build a world where communication is covenantal and healthy communication processes are used, where conflicts are opportunities for creative growth and transformation, and even catalysts for exciting change. Where I am you, you are me, and we are all together with the interconnected web of existence. So it's Easter Sunday, and I've already explained we're short-handed today. Jim McConnell is going to do the story for all ages and a story about Easter. What's it to you?
Happy Easter, everyone, and happy Transgender Day of Visibility also. This year they fall together, which has caused some degree of conflict. Transgender Day of Visibility the first one was started in 2009, and it has fallen on the 31st of March every year since that time. The Day of Visibility is to honor the contributions that have been made by members of the transgender community and to support their existence and promote their acceptance. Transgender people are people who have more crimes committed against them than anyone within our LGBTQ plus community, which is sad. So hopefully, we can work toward greater acceptance. Of course, this year shows, at least from what I've looked into, and I unfortunately don't have my sources with me, shows why we need a Transgender Day of Visibility. The Christian right, and I am not in any way putting down Christians in any way. I'm just putting down a certain sect of Christianity, which is the Christian right, who have really taken off on this. Even the former President Trump has been made statements against President Biden, saying that he has made this the Transgender Day of Visibility this year to fight Christianity and Easter. Although it's been on the 31st every year. I listened to a Christian minister speaking on the subject just because I like to listen to a little bit of everything. And he said, he tried to call the transgender people. He had a little trouble with that. So he came up with the word evil monkeys. And he was much more comfortable with that. He spoke of how evil they are, how they are a violent people who are killing people, causing division in homes, and just generally evil, and they have to be fought and they have to be stopped at all costs. So this is the reason we need days like this to remember that there are people other than us that we need to accept. And of course, to know that there are people out there who are going to fight and do everything they can to make things as uncomfortable for those people as possible. So I would like to read the statement that President Biden put out. Transgender Americans are part of the fabric of our nation, whether serving their communities or in the military, raising families, or running businesses. They help America thrive. They deserve and are entitled to the same rights and freedoms as every other American, including the most fundamental freedom to be their true selves.
As we light the chalice, I'd like to read from the words of the poet, many of you know, Jan Richardson. Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times, who testify to its endurance amid the unendurable, who bear witness to its persistence when everything seems to in shadow and grief. Blessed are you in whom the light lives, in whom the brightness blazes, your heart a chapel, an altar where in the deepest night can be seen the fire that shines forth in you, in unaccountable faith, in stubborn hope, in love that illumines every broken thing it finds. We light the chalice.
We're trying something new. We're going to have, which is not really new because it's actually old. We used to do it this way. We're going to have people not me, lead the service when I'm speaking. So don't be surprised if someone knocks on your door and says, hey, we'd like you to lead the service. I asked Jim because he's an easy yes. So thank you, Jim. Before we go a little deeper, the purpose of today's sermon is to answer the question, what can the ancient Easter myth of Jesus dying on the cross, spending 3 days in the tomb, and his resurrection possibly mean to modern liberal religionists like us? I will give you the answer up front. The Easter myth is a valuable map for human spiritual experience. Before we look a little deeper, I have a small 2-question quiz. I'm going to give you 2 partial sayings from 2 important spiritual leaders. I will say the first part of the quote, and I'm hoping that you will complete the quote and tell me who that leader is. Okay, so the first part of the first quote is, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. Okay, who said it? Jesus. Paul? Oh, okay, you got the step to class. So the second is, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And does anyone know, this is a little tough one, anyone who said that? No, Kurt Vonnegut might have said it, and it does sound like something he would say. But it was said in the 8th century by a Buddhist monk named Linji. So that is when most of those quotes will show up in the service today. But if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. The reference not to your actual eye, but a reference to your actual inner eye, because we know we see the outer world through a lens of our own making, and often that lens is an idol. And when Jesus was talking about, he's talking about casting down your inner idols. And the 2nd century, or the 8th century Buddhist monk Linji probably meant that if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him, probably meant that that the answers for your life are going to come from within you. That it's great to be part of a community like this. It's great to have friends. It's great to have a therapist that you spend $250 an hour to see. But in the final analysis, what is really going to save your life is going to come from within you. So back to the sermon. Science and religion are both ways of knowing. The language of science is mathematics. The language of religion is story, art, and music. I have a couple of friends who are scientists. They tend to think that religion is pretty much hogwash. I have to admit that science has the capacity to answer a lot of really interesting questions, such as, how do dolphins sleep without drowning? And by way of footnote, the answer is dolphins sleep with only one side of their brain at a time to keep from drowning. It would be kind of interesting because you could actually watch yourself dream. I would love to have that quality. That to me is a really interesting question. It is just not a very important question when it comes to the dynamics of the human spirit. When one is seeking answers to important questions such as, what should I be doing with my life? Where can I find hope? Where do I turn in my hour of darkness? Religion, at least in my opinion, has the only reliable answers. The problem is that some religious institutions refuse to evolve and often still take their myths literally, which renders them much less helpful in plotting the position and condition of the human soul. Jesus said, the people come for bread and are given stones. We see a generation of Christians who hunger for a competent church that can find little basis for faith there. Today, we celebrate the central myth of Christianity, the death on the cross, the entombment for 3 days, and the miraculous resurrection of the Christian Messiah, Jesus. This myth is a variation on a much older set of myths called vegetation myths, which are based on perennial plants that can be cut back or harvested once a year and then grow back again in the spring to produce another harvest. These myths have their origins in the early Neolithic period that began about 12,000 years ago with the invention of agriculture. Before the Neolithic, in the Paleolithic, the myths were based on animal metaphors, as one would expect when a primary way of making a living was the hunting of animals. The Easter story, along with stories like the theft of fire from the gods by Prometheus, the Mithridatic resurrection cult of ancient Rome, the story of Theseus overcoming the Minotaur at a labyrinth, Jonah being swallowed up by a big fish, the Hebrew people spending 40 years lost in the wilderness, and the mythology of death and renewal of the goddess cults of old Europe and ancient Middle East still tell pretty much the same story, a story of disruption, suffering, death, dismemberment, entombment, triumph over death, and resurrection into a new way of being. These old myths are very good roadmaps of the human spirit, if, as I mentioned earlier, one does not make the mistake of taking them literally. You have often heard me say, we create the gods, but we do not make them from nothing. We make them from ourselves. They are, in my opinion, timeless revelations, which can be extremely helpful in locating ourselves psychologically, culturally, and spiritually. They can be profoundly helpful in times of trouble. For instance, like Jesus, I may be suffering on my cross right now, but I know that there is for me a resurrection to a new way of being ripening within me. Like Prometheus, I am suffering at the hands of others, but I am bringing forth the fire of life. Like Jonah, I, because of my own cowardice and unwillingness to answer life's call, found myself in the foul belly of darkness. Like the Hebrew people wandering in the wilderness, I've been lost in a spiritual wasteland for a long time. Like Theseus, I must enter the dark labyrinth of my unconscious mind and face the monstrous fears that are diminishing and destroying my life and the lives of the ones I love. At this particular moment, I am living my resurrection. I see things much more clearly now. I have, in some undefinable way, touched a transcending dimension of life, and I am free to be. So the Easter story is really a metaphor, a kind of roadmap, as I said, for how our spiritual lives happen. And it is easy to see that everyone would like to find him or herself in the resurrection phrase, where the transcendent dimension seems close at hand, and it seems as if there's a rock-solid spiritual ground on which to stand. On the other hand, it is much harder to face up to the darkness of our tombs, our labyrinths, our fish's bellies, and the suffering of our crosses. So I have some advice for how to deal with these times of darkness. My advice is this: do not try to escape your suffering. Your suffering is yours. This is a lot different from what many folks are hearing. They're saying if you become a Christian, you're going to get rich. If you become a Christian, you're always going to be happy. Your suffering is yours. You need it to be truly human. Modern society offers many ways to escape suffering. Drugs, shopping, workaholism, watching too much TV. How many people here watch too much TV? Okay. I do too. Playing one of the almost infinite number of computer games on your phone, and most recently, the spectacle of political drama, division, and buffoonery in high-level elected officials. It is my opinion that most of the trouble humans face, personally, politically, or socially, are from an unwillingness to shoulder our own required suffering. And by suffering, I mean suffering the ability to take on your life in the whole, without all the shielding defenses we managed to create within us. You let those defenses down. It's very scary and very frightening and difficult. The refusal to suffer is very visible in the life of this nation. We seem unwilling to suffer the changes in paradigm required to address the threat of global climate change, immigration, and the rise of racist forms of nationalism. We spend billions of dollars a year on the development of high-tech ways of killing each other because we are unwilling to suffer the knowledge that we are also aggressors. We all have blood on our hands. We will never become agents of peace if we continue to deny that we too are killers and haters. Now, all of the above may sound a bit of a downer to you, who, after all, wants to suffer. Let us return to our Easter roadmap. There we see that suffering done right is redemptive. And we are willing to suffer our burdens, hang on our own crosses, and own our own darknesses. When we do our own redemptive suffering, it saves us, points the way to resurrection, and lessens the needless suffering of others. What if, for instance, a certain political figure were able to accept the fact that in a recent election, he really was a loser, or that a leader of a foreign country were willing to admit that being the next Peter the Great is an idol of his whose worship has caused the death of tens of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians. If your right eye, your inner eye, which is the lens through which we see the world, causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. This kind of has shades of Ronald Reagan that came to me as I was writing this. And Mr. Putin, tear down your inner idol and rejoin the human race. And stop killing, stop the killing. Last week I mentioned in my sermon that in marriage some suffering is required. There was some laughter, but I was being serious. Marriage in many ways is a kind of spiritual discipline that is immensely helpful in advancing one's spiritual and emotional maturity if one is willing to suffer. Further, marriage can be an excellent opportunity to use the Easter myth as a roadmap to locate yourself spiritually within your marriage and within yourself. Before I begin this sermon example, I feel compelled to say that in no way, shape, or form has what I am about to say been cleared by my wife. Patty usually reads my sermon after Sunday service, which is after the fact, which I'm a little thankful for today. The other day, Patty was looking adoringly into my eyes, as she often does, and said, "When I'm with you, Jim, I feel a depth of feeling I experience nowhere else." I said, "Why, thank you, honey." She replied, "Yes, I never thought I could be angry enough to actually want to commit murder." Okay, back to the sermon. When Patty, I got this thing, and I'm not sure it's a superstition, though I'm going to present it to you guys. My wife, hands are arthritic, and so she can no longer cook her broth. So that's become my job to cook the broth. And I have, as I was doing that today, the thought occurred to me: I wonder if there's some kind of cosmic balance that it has to be reached here. Am I going to have to hook this broth as many times as I unhooked it, and then my life on Earth will be done? I don't know. It was just a thought. Last week I mentioned in my sermon that in marriage some suffering is okay. When Pat and I were first married, we were perfectly matched. We were equally neurotic. Plus our neuroses dovetailed nicely together. I had a savior complex, let's call it my inner Lone Ranger idol, and Patty was struggling with her own inner idols. For my own safety, I will not go into those, however. After about 10 years of me trying to save her, we were pretty miserable. After some considerable time of very painful darkness, I realized that I could barely save myself, much less Patty. I went down pretty hard. My inner Lone Ranger idol crumbled to dust, and I was left feeling anxious and afraid. I felt sure that I would never recover from my despair and that I would never feel happy or safe again. Gradually, a light began to appear in the darkness. Just as the darkness that was my cross and tomb had overtaken me, so now the light of awareness was taking me over. I realized I had died to my Lone Ranger and was becoming an ordinary citizen of the world. I did not need my white horse and silver bullets anymore. In fact, I began to see myself as a kind of Tonto, a helpful presence and not a hero savior. That was my resurrection, in which I was able for the first time to realize that my own life spirit had a lot of creative things to say to me for the living of my artful life. And I just want to reaffirm here that in a lifetime, a person will go through many deaths and resurrections. So I can't say, Patty, I can't save anyone, but I have learned that the flame of life burns in every person. If you let it, it will light your way. The stuff one needs for really living is not in the sayings of a guru, the texts of ancient scriptures, or the latest self-help book. It is in you. The light of life burns for everyone. You already have everything you need for a life well lived. I can't come from anywhere other than you, or as the 9th century Buddhist monk Lin Ji said, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Let us do a bit of review. The myths of the old religions are not useless trash. They are precious treasures that are, at least as far as I'm concerned, revelatory gifts. They're spiritual roadmaps for human beings. If we learn to read them correctly, they will help us locate ourselves in life and show us how to navigate the dark and troubling times of our lives, as well as those times when our pathways seem clearly lit by the light of resurrection. It is important to remember that most of us go through multiple deaths, tombs, and resurrection in the process of growing into our lives. An important feature of our life map is suffering. The equation for suffering is a very simple one. No suffering, no resurrection. No cross, no tomb, no resurrection. Turning away from your suffering is turning away from your own, as Mary Oliver would say, wild and precious life. And now one final thing. This community of faith of which you are part is not just here for you in your resurrection moments. It is here for you in your dark times of suffering as well. Buff is where we learn to let our light shine even through our times of darkness and pain. Here we have come to understand that resurrection cannot be attained without the pain of dying to the part of your life that is no longer helpful and may be destructive. For us, or at least for me, resurrection, along with our personal crosses and our personal tombs, are landmarks on the map of the human spirit. And let's take a moment to meditate for just a little bit. I'd have some meditation music, but we don't, so we'll have to do it without this. Oh, you do have some. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think my inner light is burning more brightly because of what I've experienced here today, especially Jim's words of wisdom. So the light of courage and compassion in difficult times, the light of our shared faiths and caring community, the light of truth, love, hope, and sometimes even joy. Let us carry it in our hearts.